Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the council meeting of June 16, 2025. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the Coast Salish people, specifically the Shiano First Nation, on whose territory this district, Metchosin, stands, and our neighbors, Sook Nation, are our neighbors, our friends. We recognize and respect our First Nations governments, all whom have a long-standing relationship with the land and the sea waters that continue to this day. We acknowledge that they're making important decisions for their nation as well at the same time that we are making these important decisions. Okay, council, we have an agenda before us. We have a couple of correspondence in the pinks that we will add to the agenda. And with that, I'll take a motion to receive the agenda or to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Schicken, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have no presentations, but the CAO, did you want to say something?
Thanks, Mayor Little. My pleasure to introduce everybody to my exchange partner from New Zealand, Morag Taimalia Ne Taine. So I was fortunate, my wife and I were able to travel to New Zealand on an exchange program last year in September, and we spent 3 weeks in New Zealand, and I was able to attend a number of council meetings myself, and I wrote a comprehensive report on my learnings. If you're interested, you can read them on the LGMA website. With the help of my exchange partner, we conquered the world, I'd say. And this week we were in Kelowna at the LGMA conference. Morag represented New Zealand very well, and if we I'll coax her into a presentation tonight, she may just do something for us.
Would you like to say a few things, Brian?
Yeah, press the button.
You're welcome to.
Whakatakati hous. Oh, better? Whakatakati hou ki te uru, whakatakati hou ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki tai. He ia ki ana te āta kua, he teo hi hoka he hauhu tihei Māori ora. Tēnā rā tātou katoa, ko nono taha te monga, ko te rotorua nui a kahu mata mo moi te moana. Ko te arawa te waka, ko Ngāti Whakaue te iwi, ko Ngāti Pakahu te hapu, ko o te kaimahi, mo te konihira takiwa o kapiti, ko o te kai tohu tohu matua kiritaki me te hāpori, ko Morag Taimalia Tāne aho. Kia ora, my name is Morag Taimalia Tāne. Apologies for any of my pronunciation in this speech, but not for my accent, because it's really cool. I was a lucky recipient of the Taituara LGMA exchange with Bob, who's taken great care of me, and it was great to meet him in New Zealand, Aotearoa, and over here experiencing Kelowna, and now Metchosin, Sook, and Victoria. I just introduced myself at the start there through my pepeha, so that's the Te Ao Māori way of introducing myself, by sharing with you my connections to my people and my places that are important. For Māori land's not just a geographical space, so it's a spiritual and integral part of our identity, culture and well-being. And so with that in mind, I am grateful to the Sionu Beecher Bay peoples, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, to be here experiencing their incredibly beautiful land. So I'm from the Kapiti Coast. It's towards the bottom of Te Iko Maui, so the North Island of New Zealand. We're a community of around 58,000 people. We live on a stretch of land quite similar to yours. We're bordered between beautiful mountains and hills right down to the water. And that's where I grew up, so I can speak pretty passionately about it. I'm also grateful to work in and for my community at Kapiti Coast District Council. My role is Principal Advisor of Customer and Community. So I work with mana whenua iwi partners in our community to shape and influence how council supports and enables community development in a strategic way. But within Te Ao Māori tikanga, manaakitanga is core. It's a principle that emphasises reciprocity. It's about acknowledging and uplifting others, through kindness and responsibility and interactions, creating respect and understanding. And so with this in mind, I do have a little treasure, the tonga for me little, for my mayor, Janet Holborough, which she wanted to gift to you.
Thank you very much.
Is it okay to bring it?
Mhm.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me here. Thank you, Bob, for taking such great care of me. Kia tau, tau rangamaria, ki ronga ina iwi o te ao. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you very much and welcome. Okay, with that, we have time for public participation. You have 4 minutes at the microphone. If you could identify yourself with your name and your road. Thank you.
I'm speaking on with 2 hats, so I'm hoping that I can have a second half, but I'll do that afterwards. So speaking as the president of the Metchosin Community Association, Kiara Kakawilla, Perry Crossroad resident, at the Metchosin Grounds Group meeting on March 27th, while I could not attend, I did check the notes and I cannot find a reference to the discussion about the location of the new Firehall, as the area currently in question is used for parking and sometimes overflow parking for larger events within Metchosin's core. What consideration has been given to the impact of change of the land use will have on the affected grounds groups? Regular users like the farmers market, the community association for the garage sale, and Metchosin Community Day do all use that side of the field, as well as previous events like the Ford and Friends, Macca's July 1st festivities, and even overflow parking for the Halloween bonfire. Just wondering when there'll be an opportunity to participate in discussion and community engagement in regards to the grounds groups. So that's my first.
Okay, next.
Did I not push? Oh, I didn't push the button. Sorry. Sarah, Metchosin Road. First thing I was thinking about with the Firehall is the whole issue of, I just heard some people online in various places talking about being upset about, I think, the firefighters coming in on the 5th. And I was really disappointed to hear that, because they have just as much right, if not more, to have concerns about where they work. I mean, I believe in workers' rights and things, and they have a right to a safe workplace. They give so much to this community, and I think we need to value that and let them have their say. And I think the fact that they only had one person really get up is very small amount compared to really the amount of input that they should have in this. The other thing, I think, really the biggest thing I think is the cost that people are concerned about. So there is a saying, I lived in Russia for a long time, and there's a saying that I really love. It's "Skupoy platit dvazhdy." That means cheap pays twice. So I think if we don't do this now, we are basically going to fit that model. Right now, if we just go to fixing the fire hall and push this down the road again, we're going to be paying for that, and that's not going to be cheap to get it to a place where it can be used, and it still won't be good enough. So it's still going to have to be done somewhere down the way, and there may not be a grant like there is now, and there may not be, maybe way, way more expensive. I mean, everything just keeps increasing exponentially right now. I mean, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but like for the future of this community, we need a good fire hall. Like that is essential. Eric bonked his head the other day, and they were there in like 5 minutes, and it took the ambulance about 20 minutes to get there. And it made me realize, like, if we don't have them, it's really serious for everyone here. We have an aging community that needs these people, and they need to be in a safe workplace. Because I mean, like, also the cost to this community, if something happens, if some of those guys get sick from mold or I don't know, get bit by a rat or whatever happens, like that's a liability too. So yeah, I think that brings me to another saying that I really love. I think I've used it before. It's my dad's favorite saying, and that's the getting's good. So the getting is as good as it's going to get right now, I think. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak?
Patty Whitehouse, Rocky Point Road. As with other, I think that it's obvious that we need a new fire hall, and the location of it that's been suggested makes sense to me. But as others have expressed, I'm concerned about what will happen about the parking that we so much rely on. I'm wondering whether there has been any consideration given, or what is planned, what's been discussed about taking down the old fire hall and turning that area into parking, or whether there are other strategies that have been considered.
Thank you.
Gary Lamb, 860 Hackmore Drive. Question regarding the fire hall. I don't think anybody in the community disputes that it needs to be upgraded in certain areas, particularly for the firefighters and their safety. But in looking at the documents, and it raises the question whether the appropriate level of due diligence was carried out on the various options regarding the fire hall. And I refer to the March 11th, 2025 District of Metchosin Fire Hall Steering Committee meeting, where it was carried by the committee that JDA was to provide a cost estimate of upgrading the current apparatus bay to current codes and standards, which it appears was never done. Secondly, on the April 22nd, 25 report, Skyline Engineering report spoke to getting a qualified general contractor or surveyor to provide an order of magnitude cost on how to best proceed with the existing apparatus base. And again, it appears that was not done. So it raises the question as to why, and is council in a position to move forward without having appropriately considered all the options? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak?
Kiara Kahakawilla, Perry Crossroad resident. I'm speaking tonight in support of the new fire hall for our volunteer fire department. I'm also speaking in support of this council's strategic plan and priorities about a new fire hall, which states, council will ensure community engagement is undertaken around the options under consideration. In short, a project this large and this financially significant needs council to take more time and develop more options for information sharing, input gathering, and overall community engagement. The ability to secure grant funding is critical to the success of something this major. The ability to responsibly secure funding should a grant not materialize or be funded in a lesser amount is also critically important. Community buy-in and support should be paramount in the face of potential community division. The first intake of the Strategic Priorities Fund is available now with a deadline of September 12, 2025. In reviewing the information on the website, I found that the first agreement, because we are now talking about the second agreement, had 3 intakes with a maximum grant award of $6 million. We're now talking $7 million. Right beside this information was a contact for Brian Steer at UBCM, and I gave him a call. Lovely to talk to and answered my questions easily. Specifically, I asked about the number of intakes the second agreement would have. He said that they tried to have between 2 to 4 intakes within the 10 years, but likely 3 intakes as per the first agreement. I asked if there was a per capita funding allocation, and he told me that project projects were awarded amounts based on merit, and they did try to have regional representation. In the last intake of the first agreement, 8 of the 23 maximum amount applications were approved. Council has time to do this right and leave a legacy of your leadership with this project. The interesting dynamic of being a local elected official is that sometimes the projects you start and/or are passionate about are completed outside of your term. Councils before you have laid the groundwork for this project. They have done this by adopting a policy of low to no borrowing and in raising funds through establishing growing reserves. In recent council terms, they have also contemplated the need to replace, at a minimum, the old Firehall building. It is no secret that the District of Metchosin has and is considering what to do about the old Lombard precast property. Where is that at? And even if you cannot speak to that this evening, have you provided the necessary information and that option to the Firehall Steering Committee? This property is likely soon to be available and would be a perfect site for a new fire hall and training facility for our volunteer firefighters. As I said, I am speaking in favor of a new fire hall for our dedicated volunteers. Regarding the application for removing the entire municipal grounds from the ALR, I have to ask why. Even if the best site is determined to be where it is currently being proposed, the need for removal of all municipal grounds is an ill-conceived concept. What does that say to our rural and farming community? That the ALR is for naught? By proceeding in this matter, you are setting the stage to be hypocrites when landowners come to council asking the same of their properties. The ALR should be protected, and while there are some pieces of land that should not maybe be in the ALR, the removal of land should only be for what is needed and makes sense. Not all the municipal grounds is not suitable for farming in a crisis. For example, the cricket pitch does have the potential to be converted to functional agricultural land. I would like to close by asking council to take a step back, take a deep breath, and engage your community. Get them excited about the prospect of the new infrastructure that was carefully decided upon and responsibly funded in order to keep costs low in the district and to maintain and foster our rural identity. I also ask council to be very careful not to divide this community over the needs of our fire department. This is not the legacy you want to leave for your time here at this table. Leadership is hard, but the rewards for doing it right are personally satisfying and community growing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Eric White, Metchosin Road. Let's throw some pie in the sky ideas out there, because one option for not removing anything from the ALR, not even have to apply or anything like that, and generally towards the future of what a lot of farming will be, is in the essence of what Brett said and Shelley were pointing out. It's not a space, or let's put a greenhouse on top of the fire hall. Let's not put residents on there. Let's put something that grows food, and therefore there's no having to take it out of the ALR. It's a great thing for our firefighters to have is fresh produce growing on their rooftop. Rooftop gardens are a thing, and aquaponics facilities are a way of the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Tamara Ballard, I'm a chosen resident, taxpayer. I'd like to say that I do support business rising in 7A and B. I think the movie night is a great idea to get the community together. I also think that, well, Patty actually took the words out of my mouth about the parking. Why has nobody said anything about turning the old administrative office area and surrounding area into a parking? And if we use that building instead of for an emergency operations, my understanding is that if we don't use it for emergency operations, we don't need to take it to seismic upgrading. Therefore, if, say, example, Public Works uses it for whatever, then why couldn't we use some of that space as well? That would, it's closer to the farmer's market, it's closer to the garage sale. To save a space just purely for parking, even though it's in agricultural land, and not farm it, seems kind of ridiculous to me that we're putting parking over people. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. I support that. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, let's move along. We've got the adoption of the minutes starting on page 5. We have the council meeting from May 26 to begin with.
Move adoption.
This is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we've got the receipt of the minutes. First of all, for Thursday, June 5th, 2025. This is the Committee of the Whole.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Epps, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we have the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, June 9th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's great with the receipt of the minutes. Moving along to the Mayor's report. First of all, as was noted in this month's Metchosin News, congratulations from Council is extended to the BC Parks Foundation and the Metchosin Foundation on the second of a very significant conservation outcome in the heart of natural wildlife, the corridor that extends from Race Rocks to Roche Cove via Mary Hill. The 51-acre parcel of private land abutting Mary Hill and the Galloping Goose Trail has been purchased. The property is ecologically significant, especially for the millions of birds that pass over the project or the property and the wildlife that use the property as a corridor. Please join us in thanking BC Parks Foundation for establishing this important new natural area in Metchosin and in welcoming Rocky Point Bird Observatory to their new home. Please also visit the Metchosin Foundation website for videos and photographs. So congratulations and project well done from Council. And then moving along in my councillor's update or my mayor's update, I'm not going to go through everything, but as vice chair of the CRD, we continue to have government-to-government discussions with First Nations. This last month, we were at the South First Nation for signing a memorandum of understanding. It was actually a really emotional event because in the room they had all pictures of elders along the walls, and they kept referring to their elders, and some of the elders were in the room. The elders in the room spoke very highly of the relationship with the CRD, and the drum-in ceremony really set us off in a good way. So it was really great. I think you were represented well at this signing ceremony. The Heartland Landfill Renewable Natural Gas Site opening ceremony. So this was this month as well. I was MC at this event, and we were working. The CRD was working with Fortis Energy and Waga Energy Canada. They started producing renewable natural gas at the new facility located next to Heartland Landfill. And this is the first of its kind on Vancouver Island. I think we'll see more along that line. It did cost $32 million. That's anticipated to be recouped within the first 7 years. So I think it was a good investment and good for the environment. As you may have heard, the CRD is interested in purchasing the Kapoor lands, which surround the watershed. We're very interested in this 1,900 hectare piece of land to secure and preserve the lands and of course the watershed. And so there is an AAP that closes at the end of this month on that. That's the alternative approval process for the boring of the massive $33 million that will be required to purchase these lands. So that is due, the AAP is on up to June 30th. I attended the Royal Canadian Air Cadet Squadron ceremony, march, all around, salute and march. It was a really fun evening to take part in. And then councillors and mayors of the West Shore were invited to go to the West Shore Parks and Recreation facility to see the tour. We also had a ribbon cutting the other day of the new pickleball courts, 6 new pickleball courts to the tune of $467,000. So I'm hoping that Metchosin residents make use of the pickleball courts and the newly resurfaced tennis courts. event at the West Shore. Congratulations to all that were involved in that. And that concludes my mayor's report. It's been a busy month. Turning now to business arising. On page 29, we have recommendations from the Committee of the Whole on June 9th. This is the movie night at Metchosin School. Councillor Epp.
Move that council support the Health and Community Advisory Select Committee hosting a movie night at the gym this summer.
This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comment? No? No? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then on page 31, we have business arising from the Committee of the Whole recommendations from June 9th, 2025. Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I would move that council endorse the preferred option, program layout, new site option in the Johnson-Davidson Architecture Report dated May 28th, 2025 to build a new fire hall on the adjacent site to the existing fire hall. So
Is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Epp. Discussion. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Little. You know, I said at the meeting from June 9th, I agree that there's some flaws in the process. However, I believe option 1A is sound, and I was quite taken again by the concept of cost control that was mentioned in the architect's report. But more than anything, I think the critiques of this approach, the criticisms of this approach are really in line with making a delay on this project. And there have been umpteen different delays. I'm of the understanding that there was a report way back from the late 80s about the need for a new fire hall. So it's gone on for far longer than it should have. And what the other thing that I just want to point out, and I think it was Mr. I'm sorry, blanking. There was a comment last week about we're still at the feasibility stage. But what is critical in terms of the feasibility of this project is an understanding of the cost, and we have an opportunity to apply for that grant in September. Now, I understand that there might be other intakes in future years. We don't know the timing of those. So I think the time is right to strike, as someone said earlier, and also, again, we have to understand where it is we land in terms of that budget grant, if we get it at all, and what the impact is to the overall project. So I'm very comfortable with moving ahead.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Epp.
I agree with what Councillor Shukin said. I think it's really time. This has gone on for a long, long time, and I think this is the point where this council needs to move ahead to do this.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm not comfortable with proceeding at this point, but it's not so much to delay the issue, but rather to have a considered review of what's going on. And I've laid it out in previous meetings. We were told we needed a lot of information to make the decision, and a bunch of that information is missing. So I'm not sure how we're proceeding without sort of filling in the details. And just in response to Councillor Shukin's point, we've been looking at since the 1980s to replace the fire hall. There was in fact a referendum which failed, and then an apparatus bay was built in 1996. So it's not that nothing's happened. In fact, we built a fire hall that's been running for 30 years and doing pretty well. I had a couple of questions though for the CAO. He didn't make the last meeting, and I wondered if we could get a response to those. I've got three questions. One was the fire hall feasibility report. The fire department was mentioned, it came up tonight already, about health and safety issues, and it's not meeting BC WorkSafe standards. And I wonder if I might ask through the chair, why is that?
In the feasibility, through the chair, through the feasibility report, in the technical review section, it discusses all the reasons why it doesn't meet the code, fire code, or some of the areas where it doesn't meet the health and safety standards. I don't have the details with me tonight, but council is welcome to read through the feasibility report, get that information.
Sorry, just to be clear, we saw all of the lack of compliance, and I'm wondering why we're not complying. We have the list here of the issues, but I'm not sure why we're not complying. I brought it up at the last meeting, and council decided not to pursue asking that we comply, but I'm wondering why we don't comply at the moment.
What the fire chief responded was that she was going to have a report to council and to the CAO regarding what steps she has made towards mitigating some of those factors and how we are doing our best to address some of the needs of the fire hall and some of the welfare concerns, and that is coming.
Great. My concern is that we shouldn't be in that situation at all from the beginning. The second question was in relation to the timing of the referendum about taking on debt. Now, we had asked Mr. Creek about that, and he said he'd check with the CAO. What I'm wondering about, so we have the motion before us, which is to go to the preferred option. And my understanding is we're doing that in order to make an application for a grant in September. And my question is that if we apply for a grant and we make a council motion to proceed, which I was told is part of the requirement, then we agree, and in that notion we agree to take responsibility for overruns. Do we not need a referendum beforehand? Clearly the numbers that were cited to us already by the architect will put us into the territory of taking on debt. Where in the process does the referendum take place?
As I mentioned the other night, we haven't even talked about whether we would do a referendum or an alternative approval process, an AAP. So that hasn't been discussed either with staff or at the council table. We don't even have the Class D estimates yet, and that will proceed after tonight. The feasibility study will receive the information from the GDA architects on the Class D estimates. So that's where that will come out. We don't know the exact cost, and that will depend on what we ask and what we decide in the drawings.
So maybe what I'm not clear about is that we as a council can't decide to go into debt without getting approval of the community. I take your point. It could be an alternative approval process or a referendum. What I'm not sure about is how do we sign on to get a grant, maximum $7 million, when the numbers we've already been provided by the architect mean that we'd have to borrow to do that. So how do we, in good faith, make the application without the permission of our community? So what's just to understand what we're doing, where's the process? Like, where is it that we move to a referendum? Is it after the grant is given to us, or what's the commitment we're giving to the granting agency?
Okay, so once again, we haven't decided whether we would need electoral approval. If we required electoral approval, as Mr. Creek mentioned the other night, there is a certain threshold. We would decide either we would want to go to the AAP or to the referendum. We haven't yet received the Class D estimates, so we don't even know. Many figures have been thrown out there. Let's wait and see what the Class D estimate is. And we know from Mr. Creek's report, we have up to 8 million in our reserves and other grants that some of those grants we have to use before a certain time within the next couple of years, or earmark them at least. And so I think it's premature to talk about it's premature to talk about electoral approval when we don't know the figures, even ballpark figures. The JDA architects have not given that to us.
Certainly. So the JDA architects gave us I've only heard one number, range was there's 550 to 650 per square foot, a 16,000 square foot proposal. And so that puts us at the top end at 9.6 million. We only have 8. If we strip away our reserves, that means stripping our reserves to get that kind of money. We also went to Class D estimate. So if it's 9.6 million, let's say it comes in at that, that means it could be up to say 15 or 16 million dollars. As you point out, we only have 8, so we have to go into debt. I'd be surprised if it came in under what the architect has already told us or the rough number he's given us. So maybe it's that I don't really understand, like in sort of transparency for the council and for the community. We were told a number of times we don't need to proceed. Tonight's not a final decision. Can you tell me what's the process to say we're not proceeding? When does that happen? So as we go forward, what's the off ramp? Is it the value of if Class D is too high, then we say we're not doing it? Or what are the reasons why we would move away from option 1A if this isn't a final decision tonight?
Well, council can weigh in, but we still need to do outreach to the community. All of these meetings have been open to the public, but I think we should do an open house in July with the drawings for option 1A and the information about the ALR land. And I think that would be an important process. Certainly we're moving towards, I'm hoping that we can apply for this grant. If we don't get any money of the grant, that would certainly change our position. I think that would be logical at this table for us to pivot and do something else. There were comments that were made the other night about why don't we move the Firehall to the Lombard lands? Well, if you notice in the OCP in section 12.2.1, it states that future public buildings should be close to the municipal hall, Metchosin Elementary School, and the community hall near the intersection of Metchosin and Happy Valley Road. So in the official community plan, it says that future public buildings should be within the village core area. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Councillor Donaldson, then Shuken.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the feedback and interest from the residents. Clearly, no one is against having the replacement of part or all of the fire department. It's a matter of location, but I think the biggest thing too would be the cost, and we've heard that again here tonight. I also appreciate the fact that the CFO was able to lay out a few other things for us in the last meeting as to where some of our funds might come from. I do want to say a few other things though. The pace of this project has accelerated dramatically. The Firehall Steering Committee met only twice actually over the past 2 years, suggesting limited urgency until the consultant was engaged. Even in 2025, there's only been 2 meetings. A third was canceled, which was supposed to be June 11th. And suddenly, with a strategic priorities grant opportunity on the table, there's an intense pressure to act quickly. This is an amazing opportunity. It doesn't mean that we're going to get it, but to apply for it is a good opportunity to consider that. However, there's a lot to be considered before we do that. So the timeliness is important, but I believe urgency must not override sound process. And I feel that, there's a few things missing. First of all, where did the preferred option actually come from? It certainly wasn't from the steering committee. You can look at any of their minutes, they're online, there's nothing there about that. It's only come up recently in a committee meeting, special committee of the whole. So there are many fundamental questions that remain unanswered, of course, and substantial groundwork is still required for the application of the grant to be credible and for us to be informed. and for it to be broadly supported. If the grant is unsuccessful, then what? There's all sorts of things we have to consider. This past weekend, I attended the open house for the central sandwich proposal that they have. And you can go on their website. They have a schedule of events, open houses. Some they've done, some they're going to do. They're going to have at least 4 open houses, and they're going to have pop-ups throughout the summer. Their model is a little different because they're combining police, fire, and the municipal hall, housing, and some amenity things. And they have 4 concept drawings all ready to go to provide for the public. It was well attended, it was well orchestrated. But not to mix what they're doing with what we're doing. Ours is a little different again. Every community is. But these choices that we have not yet made or will be making will have lasting consequences. From a financial standpoint, I see 3 potential paths: remain debt-free, borrow and take a significant debt, or raise taxes. And we know with each $30,000 expenditure, that's a roughly 1% hike. The variables are still unclear. I believe finances remain the greatest concern to many of our residents. It's also important to acknowledge that recently we learned from a report here in this chamber of the Metchosin's poverty reduction strategy, which identified residents already living in financial hardship. That report included recommendations for how the district could do better in supporting vulnerable households. Launching a major capital project that may significantly increase taxes without fully understanding the impacts risks exacerbating these vulnerables or these vulnerabilities. This is about more than a building. It's about the long-term financial health, social fabric, and sustainability of our entire community. I believe, but the process must remain informed, equitable, and responsible. That's all I have for the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Shukin, then Councillor.
Thank you. I just wanted to get back to comments Councillor Gray was making about funding. And what I expect is bound to happen is once we get the estimate, once we understand where we sit with the grant, there will be a financial modeling process that takes place. And we will understand the potential for borrowing. And as Councillor Donaldson was saying, what the impact of those 3 elements are: borrowing, going for debt, well, sorry, same thing, and the potential of raising taxes. The idea has also been thrown out that we may have to look at revenue, more sources of revenue in the community. So I don't see any, again, moving ahead right now will allow us the opportunity to actually do the modeling that will give us a clear picture on what the financial impact of the Firehall is going to be. So, yeah. But thank you to, and I just appreciate Councillor Donaldson's comments. I feel like the process has not been optimal, but backing off the process now, to me, is a recipe for further delay that I don't believe we can afford any longer. So, thank you.
Councillor Ebb.
Yeah, I found it quite interesting because many months ago on the Firehall Steering Committee, when it was sort of the idea was first discussed, a couple of the experts on the committee, a builder and an engineer, both agreed that it was most likely going to be just as expensive to try to renovate or refit the existing bays as it would be to build new ones. So, much time later on the steering committee, it was decided to ask the architect to give us further information on more on the viability of rebuilding the bays. And once again, the answer came through that it was very likely would be as up to or more money to refit or renovate the existing bays, plus the fact that the bays, even repaired, wouldn't be suitable for future needs for the fire hall, given the increasing size of the trucks and the equipment that was needed. So to me, this option that he did come back with makes the most sense. It's not safe to keep delaying this, which I think is what seems to be happening with more and more studies required. If we want to go and cost out renovating the bays, it would be probably upwards of $100,000 only to tell us what we really already know. So anyway, I do believe that this is the best route for us to take.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I guess I just want to mention the issue of delay. I'm not too interested in delay. In fact, at the last meeting, I proposed something which would be a lot faster than this process, which is to put out a request for proposals for a fixed price design build, knock down that the administration building, and ask people what they can do for us for $6 million in terms of putting up a new building and strengthening the apparatus bay. I think we'd be moving along a little bit quicker. So it's not about delay, it's about looking at real live options. We asked, or we were told we should get a series of different ideas about financing, about different options. We've ended up with one financing option, go in debt. And I'd like to look at the other option, which is a little bit quicker, and find out what we can get done here. As regards the issue of, it might be more expensive, or we expect it'll be more expensive, we don't have any number, like how expensive. So I think when we hear from our residents that doing our due diligence makes sense on a spend of maybe $9.6 million, it's worth taking a moment to do the thing properly. But I wanted to drop back though to a different question, which was, you folks know I did a bit of investigation the last time around about this grant. And in fact, this is the second time there's been a grant like this in the past decade. So it was 2015 to 2024, for 9 years there were millions of dollars available, and there were 3 intakes. And if you go through those intakes, you'll see that only one community was able to get money for a fire hall, and they received the sum total of $37,000. So people have been kicking around $7 million. I'm not clear where we've got that idea that we would qualify for that in this grant process. And we're running pell-mell to get there because of that view. I would like to ask through the chair if our staff have called the UBCM group and asked them, what are our chances of getting a grant at all? How much money might be available for a community like ours in this circumstance? This is the kind of thing that administrative staff do all the time. And so have we spoken to them and asked those questions through the chair?
No, staff has not reached out to UBCM. I'm just wondering, Mr. Creek, I was wondering if you've looked through the application. Can you comment on what was allowed in past applications and what is allowed explicitly in this cycle of grants?
So through the chair, I tried to find the 2015 application guide online. I was not able to locate that. So all I could do was look at the previous winners of the grant. I did find somebody getting $37,000 for an energy retrofit for their fire hall, but in 2022, Burns Lake, they received $3.1 million for a new fire hall, and that was their total cost was $4 million. And then there was another one in Cassis, and they received $1.8 million to relocate their fire hall into an old woodworking portion of the school that they had. So it's the 3.1 was equal to like 77% of their total budget. So getting $7 million on a potential $15 million fire hall is well within the range, it seems, based on what they paid over recently.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say it's impossible to get the $7 million, but certainly is based on us having a really good grant application, proving that it is needed for our infrastructure, community growth, and it would also reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from the current one, that leaky roof, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
So through the
Ray.
chair, can I just confirm that's the General Strategic Priorities Fund that you're describing, Mr. Creek?
Through Chair.
Correct.
Yeah, is the last intake from like 2022 is when they gave it to Burns Lake and Tassis. And then 37 was given, I think it was the 2012, 2015 version of it. I forget who that was given to.
Thank you. That's new information from what I went through the grants today. So I'll look forward to digging that up. Sorry.
Oh, I just, I went through the grant recipients as well, and I forget what years, but I did notice in one of the years there was just no fire halls at all. And then in it must have been the 2022, as Mr. Creek is saying, there were two. But as I understand it, sometimes the criteria will change or the intakes encouragement will change. So, and apparently now with this coming one, fire halls are specifically noted as projects that can be submitted. So.
Yeah, fair enough. I didn't see them in the list there, but I'll go back and recheck that. The other thing that I've been curious just in terms of talking about, we heard it here at the podium about modernizing the fire hall. So it seemed to me there were a couple things. There was modernize, health and safety, and then the seismic upgrade. And again, we're running pell-mell to the idea of replacing the apparatus bay, when I think the discussion for the longest time back to the 80s was actually about the administration building in terms of it being replaced. And I tried to raise the health and safety issues the other day, and you know what happened. We're not going to pursue that, except sounds like there might be a report. Council's not going to ask for more. The modernizing question, having larger trucks, I think was mentioned a moment ago. My understanding is that we have short trucks for a reason. That's and four-wheel drive capacity, and that's so we can go up our laneways and driveways and things. And we're not, as far as I know, never intended to have larger trucks in Metchosin. So why we would build a fire hall that was for larger trucks when we actually don't have a need for that. I'm curious about that aspect as well. At any rate, the seismic upgrade, I took a look at that. We haven't had any discussion at the table about the risks here, and that's one of the complaints we've heard from our community. So I looked up, recent studies estimate a 15% chance of a magnitude 8 or greater earthquake occurring in this subduction zone in the next 50 years, and 85% chance of there not being one. And now we're rushing here. I would like to just think about that a little bit. The public concern was for the safety of our paid on-call firefighters. And in the event of an earthquake, most of them won't be here because they don't work all the time. Our apparatus bay is presently our most earthquake-resistant building of all the buildings we have. And likely people have the same or higher risk at home where they're working now and as compared to our fire hall. And the firefighters who are at the fire hall are actually at less risk than the people working in this building. So our staff in this building are more at risk than the people in the fire hall. And I'm kind of, the rationale for the seismic upgrading wasn't about the health and safety of our firefighters. We're okay with staff being in a building like this. It seems to me the argument for building a fire hall was so that our trucks and equipment would be preserved and so we could deal with them post-disaster. So the three issues, the modernize, clearly it's an older building, the apparatus bay, but it's got everything it needs to provide the medical call-outs that people mostly have, and we seem to do fairly well with our fires. But it'd be really good to have that building more sturdy than it is today. I'm not arguing against that so much. But I don't think we necessarily, if we're building a new building, then I get it, we modernize, but I'm not sure about the issue of replacing that apparatus bay, instead strengthening it so that the apparatus will be good there. I'm of course interested in proceeding with the fire hall renewal. It's just the nature of the discussion that we're having about it when we haven't checked, in my view, done our due diligence on the price of fixing up the old one. or proceeding in a different way entirely with no debt, no using the ALR, and that's the design, build, fixed price contract and find out what's out there and do it quickly. So we know even before, I think in the annual report, you say the feasibility study will be done by 2026, Mayor Little. We'd have that done before 2026.
Okay, so regarding the, I'll speak and then you turn over to you. Regarding the grant, I think it would be really derelict in our duties if we didn't apply for the grant. Up to 7 million means up to 7 million. We don't know how much we could get. We don't have a crystal ball, but we need to allow staff enough time to put in a very good application. For the grant, we need the completed application form. We need the attached feasibility study. Take note that many communities don't have the feasibility study yet. So they would say, well, I don't know if we can get a feasibility study in the next 3 months to get this. This grant was just announced in May. And so we've already got the hardest part, which is the feasibility study. We'll need a detailed cost estimate template, so if we can allow JDA architects to work with the feasibility or the steering committee to get those estimates for that, work with our CFO. We need a map or a drawing, a project budget, and current council or board resolution to the effect. And so I think I feel very strongly that we should at least try for the grant. And the question of borrowing, most municipalities do borrow for infrastructure projects, because to tax for that large infrastructure project would be phenomenal in Metchosin. And so the Municipal Finance Authority has very low interest rates for municipalities for borrowing. And my view on borrowing is you're borrowing on the backs of the people that will be using the fire hall for the next 10 to 20 years. We are using reserves, which are people from the past have contributed to those reserves in their taxes. So there is a bit of a balance between past and current, and then future residents paying for a major infrastructure process or project. That's all I have to say about the grant, and I would really like to see us move forward with the grant. Don't forget, the grant won't be awarded in September. The applications are due up to September 12th. It'll probably be 6 months to a year. In that time, we can continue with the process, continue with the public engagement, continue with the Fire Hall Steering Committee, and answer some of the questions, many of the questions that are outstanding. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. The way this this motion is written is this was the preferred option. And the preferred option, to me, looks like a Cadillac. It's a brand new build. It's 4 times the size of what we have. The original studies were all to be on the same footprint. We do have a couple of drawings that the public probably has not seen yet of that same footprint. There's a lot of information that has not been explored. Some things have been discussed. We don't know the actual cost, what it would be for a renovation. We don't know the cost, what it would be to build on-site or off-site. We have not seen the dollars. We just know from comments that have been shared. I asked Mr. Craig on two different occasions about enhancing the apparatus bay, and where there's variety of different ways of doing that, even building on both sides. So you do have the spine on one side and the gear can go in that, etc. There's a lot of different things, a lot of moving parts. We know that the admin building is the oldest and needing the most attention probably. We could build it in phases. These are conversations. We've heard lots of great ideas here at the podium tonight and the last 2 meetings. It appears that this pigeonholes us, the way it's worded here, that, you know, we would prefer this particular option. We don't know. I don't know. I'm assuming those who are in favor of it do know. If that's what we're going with, I would prefer to listen to the residents of this community as well, seeing as how they will be footing the bill. We're going to be paying taxes on the principal and the interest, so we don't even know what that looks like yet. As far as, and going back to retrofitting the bays, why I say this is the only thing other than the seismic moving things around in there to make it more workplace safe was critical. The size of engines will change if we go longer. We have no reason to go longer, as Councillor Gray has suggested. This was something I learned from one of the elders in our community, is that, you know, we have the short wheelbase because we do have a rural community, but also when we think about mutual aid, it's something we offer our bordering communities too, when we can go to their communities and be able to get our trucks into areas that maybe their longer engines could not. Those are things to always consider. The width of engines and trucks don't change because the road width does not change. So we're limited with that. Yes, the garage doors in the front and the back, maybe they have to be wider. Clearly there's no problem parking in and out because those trucks go in and out with any mishaps. Yeah, there's a lot of information that we simply don't have, and this particular motion really does pigeonhole us. I wish it had been worded a little differently. However, I won't be supporting the motion as much as I do support that applying for the grant. I think it's a good idea, and completely support the Firehall rebuild on part of it, maybe renovation on the other part. Those are things that we still have not discussed, and a lot more information is required to make any final decision, clearly.
Thank you. In order to apply for the grant, we need a council resolution. That's part of the required application content. So we need a current council or board resolution indicating support for the proposed activities. So we need that to be able to move forward on applying for the grant. There's no use applying for the grant unless you include all the required contents. Councillor Epp.
We've kind of gone around in circles now. Could we call the question?
Yes.
Just a point of order. Did you want to do that? You might want to make a motion to do so.
There is a motion on the table.
Right, no, I meant you want to, if you'd like to limit the discussion, then you need to make a motion to do that. It needs to be seconded.
Go ahead. Okay, we'll move to limit the discussion.
Mayor Lill.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead,
Mayor Lill.
Tina.
If there is a motion already on the floor, so the discussion should resolve the discussion should be around the motion. You do not need a motion to end the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to ask more questions specifically about the motion on the table to endorse the preferred option?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So
I just wanted to know this. The deputy corporate officer reminded me before the meeting, the council meeting, this is to ratify the options. It's not to relitigate everything that was said at the last two meetings. I mean, we could be here for hours. I will take summary statements. I'm not trying to limit your ability to speak at the table. I'm just trying to limit the time that we stay here because we've got more to discuss this evening.
Certainly. I mean, this is probably the biggest decision this council will make as how to build the fire hall. So having some opportunity to go through the issues, I think, is important. What I wanted to ask about, you mentioned the Lombard property, and I wondered, and you mentioned the OCP. For the longest time, the councils prior to this one have been discussing the Lombard property with some idea of the fire department having a training center out there or some facilities there, public works possibly. Are you saying all of that would not align with the OCP?
No, no, I'm talking about, that's programs. I'm talking about future buildings. So the comments the other night was, why not move the fire hall to the Lombard Road former cement plant property, which we have not purchased, but if we were to purchase it. All I'm saying is that doesn't align with having the fire hall there when the rest of the public buildings are within the village core. And also, that just doesn't make sense to me. We'd have to do major road upgrades on a very small, narrow road in a tight residential area. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm sure that the Fire Hall Steering Committee knew about the OCP and its guidance towards building municipal public buildings close to the center.
So maybe I could ask then through the chair, I think well, we have a couple of members of the committee here. Did the committee discuss the Lombard property and the question of putting a fire hall there? I understand you don't maybe like the option. I'd just like to know whether or not that option was considered by the Fire Hall Committee, knowing that we might acquire the property.
Councillor Epp or Councillor Donaldson, go ahead.
During the time that I've been on there, there's not been a discussion that I've recalled.
Well, as we do not have the Lombard property, there wasn't any point in discussing whether to put the fire hall there or not.
Can we explain what the status of the Lombard property is at this point in time?
No, I can't.
Would it impact this evening's decision if we did know?
I doubt it.
I guess the question of options for me is important because I can see options that we're not even looking at that come at low cost that would get us a pretty decent fire hall, and that's why some of these things have come up tonight. But turning attention to the loss of the parking, I seem to recall that Metchosin Day stopped because we lost the parking at Knights of Columbus property. And if this property is lost, I'm guessing then that we would hit the Metchosin Day, the ability to hold Metchosin Day. We have the garage sales mentioned here a moment ago, the farmer's market. This was packed on the weekend. It lightened up a little bit for late in the afternoon, but it was very busy here. And one of our points in our strategic plan is the social pillar. It seems to me if we lost the parking there, we would lose our opportunity to have these big gatherings, which are sort of fundamental to our identity. And has anybody did the steering group discuss the loss of the parking? And did they have any advice for us? I know that the consultant was from Vancouver, a big city, doesn't live here, says, why don't we put it there, a vacant piece of property? But what was discussed at the working group or the steering committee rather, as regards what we do about the parking question?
Councillor Epp or Councillor Donaldson, was parking discussed at the steering committee meeting? Councillor Donaldson first.
At the March 11th steering committee meeting, we received a similar book on, I don't know if it was the same size or smaller. We only went through some of the concept drawings. There was no discussion specifically about event parking. The May 14th meeting, the material was not legible because the font size was too small. So we talked a little bit about some of the concept drawings, but that we would come back June 11th because at that point it was shared with us from staff, the electronic version, so that we could actually zoom in again because it wasn't legible. So it did limit full discussion on what took place. The subcommittee actually was trying to report back some of their information, but I don't recall parking or the altered parking of events that took place in the community.
The comments about the lack of parking and we no longer have Metchosin Day. What happened was we lost the ability to park in the adjacent field, and so the committee pivoted. We still have not a Metchosin Day, but we have a community day, and they found alternate ways to manage that event. It wasn't just the parking. There was feelings that it was getting too big, too many vendors, wasn't meeting what they wanted, their vision of a Metchosin community event. And I suspect if we pursue with this, that parking will be addressed. There's going to be a hole in the ground if we take down the old part of the fire hall, the administrative part, and that would be fine for parking as well. I haven't thought about it too much. Anybody
so
else?
it hasn't been discussed by the steering committee?
I guess not.
I think just to the limit that that there would be some parking available when the administration building was taken down. But just as an aside, while there was a huge crowd at the recent community association garage sale, and people were parked along the road, but there was a lot of room across the road beside the school where people could have parked.
Councillor Shukin.
And that is exactly what I was going to say as well. So this field was well used, especially in the morning. As the afternoon went on, there was plenty of places to park, but the other field was not used at all. One of the things that we've seen with parking over the years is it evolves. And it's been evolving event after event. So we now know that during Metchosin Day, we don't try to park on the north side, block off the end of Happy Valley there and William Head there. So we're learning as we go. And if I regret the loss of the field if it goes this way for parking, but we will have to adapt further. And I believe that there is a higher calling in terms of this land for the potential of a new fire hall. So again, I do respect the comments that were made, but we've continued to evolve our thinking around parking, so, and we'll continue to do so.
So I might just
Councillor
mention
Gray? Yep.
no plan, and the loss of that would be significant. And for me, it's about the social fabric of the community. So maybe you could just drop back to understand. So we passed the motion tonight. I only heard one reason why there might be a no-go, and that was the cost. In other words, how much debt we're taking on. Do you have a sense today of how much debt you're prepared to take on, like when we get to that decision? Or do you want to hear the other numbers first? I just don't know.
I think we'll discuss the numbers when we get the Class D estimate, when we allow the feasibility study to carry on and complete. And we'll have more discussions. This is not the end of discussions. We will continue to discuss.
So if the number were at that time too high for you to tolerate, for either reason of taking it on or inability to pay it back or whatever it might be, then would we consider other options like a design build at that point, like do it later, just not now?
Well, right, what we need now is an endorsement from council on a preferred option so that we can apply for this grant. So we don't have to, if we're successful, we don't have to put that money in. We don't have to put the burden on the taxpayers.
But I guess my position would be that I think we need a renewed fire hall. So how would we get it if the debt's too high or too high for you to take in this option? Would you then be prepared to take a less costly option? But when does that, I just don't know when. We said we talked to the public about, we'd have a community engagement of options, plural. And now I think we're talking about a community consultation about one option. When would we talk about the other options with the community?
So I think we're spinning our wheels, and the thing that we're looking for is, again, the outcome of the grant, which again could be incredibly material to this project, whether it's 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. I mean, Mr. Creek's comments gave me hope that we might see a very significant contribution from the provincial government, but we don't know. So we have to move ahead with applying. But I think the question, or the answer to Councillor Gray's question is, it depends. It depends how much we get. So we know those three things that Councillor Donaldson mentioned, the use of reserves, the use of borrowing, and the potential of raising taxes. What is the mix in all of that? We will not know until we know the outcome of the grant. And almost certainly, whether it's this coming year or years past, we will probably not be able to build a fire hall without some form of grant. So it's either we go for it this year, or we wait and we wait. Maybe Councillor Gray's option about the design build and we get, 6 million, 8 million, maybe that's viable. I just want to go back to Ms. Anthony's comment about with cheap, you pay twice. And if we're only allocating $6 million to them, what is probably the most important piece of infrastructure in the community, I'm doubtful we're going to get an optimal outcome. So, Mayor Little, I wish we would call the question because I don't think this is a productive discussion at this time.
Okay, I'm gonna allow everybody to make one more comment, and then I will call the question. Who wants to go first? Okay, well, shall I call the question then? Oh, go ahead,
Well,
Councillor.
I guess I'm concerned that the characterization of asking questions or getting some idea where we're going is seen as wasteful. Whereas from my perspective, I'd like to see the new fire hall, a renewed fire hall, be dealt with as quickly as possible. And I'm not convinced that we're looking at the best option for our community at the best cost. So I think we probably have the same goal, but I would get there in a different way. And it's not about buying a cheap thing. It's about saying, what are we prepared to do? So a lot of the discussion about the existing apparatus bay is that it needs to be right up to code. Well, imagine if that outlet over there on the wall wasn't to code, it had to be 2 feet over in your house. Well, you wouldn't bring it up to code, you say it's fine where it is. I'm not convinced by what I've heard from the consultant and from the steering committee, well, actually it's from the working group, not the steering committee, that we've thought through the notion of building this up to the best that we can with the money we have available. And I don't think that's going cheap. I think that's being responsible with the dollars from our taxpayers. So I just think some of the language here has been a bit difficult. I haven't been criticizing other people, particularly from their perspectives, but rather just trying to build up the case to understand, pass the motion tonight, then we go forward, we find out it's too much, then we say we can't do it, and say, wait a minute, we have to do it. So I don't understand why this, where it is for folks who don't see a way of going in a direction that probably wouldn't put us in debt, but we use the RLR land and we just say we're not even going to consider it. Why not? You put together reports, you put it out there, you see what comes back, and then you make a judgment of it. But to go in blind and sort of race down the track like this without taking those measures and probably get a solution faster, I'm having a hard time sort of figuring it out. Not considering the Lombard property when it's been in discussion for a very long time as part of our planning seems derelict, I think was the word used a moment ago on a different topic. I don't understand that. We're not figuring out how we deal with the parking for our major community events when the social pillar is one of the strategic interests of this council. It surprises me. I think all these things need to be looked at in order that we can quickly get to a solution because they're not going away. It's not like me stopping talking means all those issues go away. They're all in front of us still. So, and I would really like us, having received a letter here from the farmers market saying, oh my gosh, think twice about this option. We've heard from the community association the same question. And we say, well, we'll go along. I'm better able to understand your position now that if the debt is too, or if the numbers are too high, then you'll stop and reconsider. So I got that tonight. And so I appreciate learning that's what we're doing here. We're just finding out, and then if it's, we don't know what too high is, but you are concerned about the spending, and I appreciate that very much. I am too. I think there's a way to get it lower than what we're proposing. And not looking at the option means we'll be staring at something that maybe says, just for example, we're going to go into debt. I'll make up a number, $4 million. And I'm saying, oh golly, we missed the chance to not go into debt at all. And that's the direction we're headed now. Only the debt amount will change your views, and yet we have another option that doesn't require debt. So I'm surprised not that we wouldn't examine that to get a good result for our fire department ASAP. I guess part of it is I worry if we do the fire hall, the training facility or the whole training program for volunteers that's been suggested might occur at Lombard won't be affordable. So we're sort of trading a shiny building for losing what actually keeps our volunteers here. And tonight it might have been talking about the fire hall, they'd like a new one. But I've understood for a long time that the training programs are really important. And to not proceed down that path seems unfortunate if that's what happens. Thank you for providing me the chance to offer my final comments.
Yeah. Does anybody else at the table want to say anything? Okay. I would prefer not to move as quickly as possible as Councillor Gray. I take comments from the community as wise ones. Be careful what you wish for in terms of quickly building something. You may end up with lots of problems. We've known, and we have in writing now, we've known for decades that the old part of the fire hall needed to be rebuilt in after a fire hall structural report in 1988, I think it was. The firm that was commissioned to give a report recommended that in their judgment the existing fire hall is in its present level of condition is unacceptable. And so that I see what Councillor Shukin said, that delay after delay after delay, we could be derelict in our duties, not apply for the grant and push this along for another council. I'm unwilling to do that. I think that would not be in our greater public's good. The apparatus bay is not up to code. It's different from a house. A house is not a public building. A house does not need to be designed for post-disaster standards. So you can't compare building a house with building the apparatus bay. I've said before that I think the apparatus bay can be repurposed for another use that wouldn't require the same stringent building. Even if we were to do as Councillor Donaldson say and shore up the outside of the walls and the roof, it still doesn't allow for proper decontamination. It still doesn't allow the necessary room or demarcation between the equipment of the firefighters and the trucks and for the exhaust buildings. We have a space issue there. I do think it is responsible for us to apply for a grant. In order to apply for the grant, we have to have a council resolution on the project at hand. They won't accept a grant with these are the options. We could take one of the 5 options. They would send us the grant back and say, well, which option, which one do you want? And that's why the council resolution is worded as such. I think we can figure out the parking as we've figured out the parking in the past. And there, councillors have noted that there have been comments from the community against using the LR land, but there has been letters of communication that have been in favor of that and in favor of option 1A. So we've heard quite a number of, I think there were 15 letters at the June 5th meeting. So we have had a lot of input from community members, and we will get more from community members. Okay. I'm going to call the question on the motion to endorse the preferred option program layout, new site option 1A in the Johnson-Davidson Architecture Report dated May 28th, 2025 to build a new fire hall in the adjacent site to the existing fire hall. All in favor? All opposed? Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Gray opposed. Let's move along to the second motion. The second motion that was from the Committee of the Whole meeting of June 9th is that Council direct staff to bring forward a report that seeks authorization to proceed with the following formal application process in the Agricultural Land Commission for 4450 Happy Valley Road. Apply to exclude the 4450 Happy Valley Road from the Agricultural Land Reserve. That's a motion. I'll put forward that motion. Seconded by Councillor Epp. Comment. Councillor Schuster.
Thank you, Mayor Little. The motion directs staff to bring forward a report that explores this option. And I just want to be clear with, I think people at the table know that, but just the audience as well. So we're not moving. It is a report that is going to give us more information. So, but yes, okay, thank you.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm speaking against the motion for the reasons that I think it's best that we preserve ALR land. That would be consistent with the recent revisions to the OCP that were made by this very council, that we have agriculture, residential, and commercial and institutional use in the village core. I think the parking issue has not been addressed, and the idea that it'll just sort of fix itself because we naturally evolve. I'm kind of more of a creature who likes to know what we're doing and where we're going and how we would deal with it with a reasonable plan in front of us. Without that, and also I'm not particularly interested in voting against the what we recently adopted agricultural plan goals and sort of the agenda there. So I'll vote against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. It actually does not say explore, it says exclude. So I just want to say we've put a lot of work into the agricultural plan. We hired a consultant, paid money for that, many hours of consulting the community. And the ALC, this is what they say right on their website. The Provincial Agricultural Land Commission is an administrative tribunal established under the Agricultural Land Commission Act for the purposes of to preserve agricultural land, to encourage farming on agricultural land in collaboration with other communities of interest, and to encourage local governments, First Nations, the government, and its agents to enable and accommodate farm use of agricultural land and uses compatible with agriculture in their plans, bylaws, and policies. We have it in our OCP. We have it in our village core plan that we just passed recently. 3 major documents that we're ignoring, well, 4 actually. This is the agricultural plan, we're missing 2. It still is viable land. It still could be farmed in a variety of ways. It could be used for, as I said last week, passive recreation, as it does every single day from sun up to sundown. Occasional parking, so we don't use it as parking every single day of the week, because we are not a city. It is for events, special events that our community loves to engage in. Plus, we have a lot of visitors that come to see us. We are a destination spot. The farmers market is a great destination. So it's only for a couple hours. We might have as overflow parking for them. Correct, we don't always use the schoolyard as parking, and hopefully we won't have to. It would be nice to see that farmed one day as well. It wasn't that many years ago that a councillor proposed putting fruit trees. Some of them have survived, some of them have not. They needed a little bit more care. It'd be great to see that happen again in appropriate places. There is no reason why we can't build a fire hall on the site that it has. Had this been worded differently to explore the other option, which was non-farm use, like we've done for the cricket pitch, and buildings have been put up for different reasons, then we would have, if we had to get any land, more access of ALR, we could have done the strip along the fire hall where there are some smaller buildings, or the bike jump park could be moved elsewhere. We're not a community that is growing. We had a report from the planner not too long ago with the calculator of housing that we require for the province, which is upwards of 800 dwellings over the next 20 years. That's not a huge amount of peoples, which then is not a lot of taxpayers, is also not a lot of requirement for more and more vehicles in a fire department, which we are very well outfitted with. The fire chief has been very mindful of keeping us modernized with our equipment, with all the turnout gear and everything that the clientele that we have for our emergency service personnel have. We've invested a great deal in the fire department. We will continue to invest in them. We are, I'm very careful and mindful that we keep this land in reserve for future farming, however that looks. I don't know, it might be beyond my years, but it is for the future. Once it's gone, that's it. We just had a partnership with Reimagine of doing a regional expose of getting more people interested in local food. We saw what happened with the pandemic. We're seeing what's going to happen and has started to happen with tariffs. I hope that my children and grandchildren have food to eat on this island. So ALR land is very important. We are not using or abusing it by putting some casual parking there. There's no parking on the roadsides, none. So we may end up not having these events. Community Day may not exist. I would really like us to be cognizant of the value of agricultural land, reserved land in Metchosin.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Epp or Councillor Shu? No. No. I just remember one thing, the lumber land is ALR land.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're proposing that we put a fire hall there, would be in the same question would be asked regarding this motion.
Yeah, no, I'm not proposing it. I'm rather looking to have somebody scope out the options.
Same thing.
No, not at all. Just as the architect did, they laid out a variety of options and considered them. I think that we need to look at all of it. I find it a bit, well, kind of shocking actually that we didn't consider that in this question. It is not at all clear to me that, I think tonight is kind of a final decision night, because if you guys are happy to go on, you've got the 3 votes who are proceeding down the path here. You know, there's that whole thing about reach across the table. What can we do to make this work? But it's like, no, we're going to do this one thing. And I would like to see the options there, and I'd like to see them worked up and explained to us so we're all on the same page and we go, okay, we could look between them. Instead here we've had one preferred option without the benefit of looking at any other options that don't, you know, except the ones that are laid out here. I've raised a few and it's kind of like, nah, I don't want to do that. Can I just confirm that this recommendation, the one before, are from a subcommittee of the Firehall Steering Committee and not from the Firehall Steering Committee, who are responsible for advising council on this issue?
As far as I'm aware, this was from the Firehall Steering Committee.
We didn't see any motions in their minutes.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak at the table? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Gray, opposed. Okay, and the final business arising from the June 16th, 2025 meeting is that the fire hall planning no longer consider a housing component. Does anybody want to speak to this?
I'll move that. I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray.
Just
Go ahead.
to, if we are moving ahead with an application for a grant, and we're, you know, what I think one of the themes that we have to grapple with as a community is limited resourcing. We wonder why the steering committee met only twice last year. Well, I mean, we don't have we don't have the staff, I think, to shepherd that process through as maybe we should have. We don't have the resources to look at all of these options that maybe we should have. With housing, housing is another complicated element, both in terms of designing into the concept and also managing in the future. And I cannot see how we're going to incorporate housing into a viable concept that we bring forward to a grant. And I don't even think we should try at this point, so.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to this?
I'm lined up with Councillor Shukin on this one.
Okay. So just a reminder, the housing option, trying to consider all options, as has been mentioned at this table, was considered because there was at that time significant CMHC and other grants available to consider rebuild with a housing component. And so the thought was perhaps we could get a huge grant. I'm not sure that those grants are available right now. And I do agree with Councillor Shukin that this might muddy the waters from going forward. I did like the idea of housing some type of mixed use facility, but I really did like the idea that there was a lot of funding attached to it. Councillor Gray.
Yeah. It seems to me I have to say that what you just expressed is exactly how I'm feeling about the bigger project. This was part of what was to be delivered as part of the, we approved a request for proposals that had laid into it. How would this work in the housing? Where would the funding come from? What kind of financing is going to be there? And we don't have the information about it. Just like we do the different options for the fire hall, just like we're missing the financing questions that were meant to be delivered by the RFP. So I'm in harmony with you. Without the information, it's hard to make decisions. It's just here I take it, without the information, you'll perhaps vote in favor of this motion to set this aside. But on the other, it's mirroring the other situation where we're proceeding without the information. So I'm mystified.
I'm not sure why you're mystified, because I remember previously you spoke really against the housing option. And so I suspect that the steering committee received that message that it wasn't a palatable option. I don't know for sure, but how can you say you want to pursue an option when you speak so adamantly against an option?
Well, I think I hope that the steering committee and others don't take direction from one councillor. I'm one councillor. Council voted that they would do it. It was included in the contract as far as we know that we approved. I'm simply pointing out that that work wasn't done, and now you're uncomfortable to make a decision. You know, gosh, we don't know whether or not the grant's available. That was all to be provided to us, all that information within the RFP. I'm just making a parallel to that to say, and I want to see all the options about a fire hall built without housing, and that's not, which we thought was in the RFP as well. It's not been delivered. So we're in the same boat, just with different questions.
No, we're not in the same boat. I'm not uncomfortable with making this decision. What I was saying is up front, when we talked about it originally, I was in favor of it. I'm not as much in favor of this as an option right now. And also, it wouldn't be a 6-story housing facility. It would be very minimal because of our constraints with water and the septic system. But we did vote the other night at the committee of the whole that the fire hall planning would no longer consider the housing element. I think this was your motion, Councillor Gray. Councillor Ebb.
Well, I know when we first talked about it, it was because of the grant money available, but it was also that we discussed that it would be, any housing would be within the new fire hall building. However, what the architect came back with, he said that any housing that was included in the building would also have to meet post-disaster standards, which would increase the price of a new hall considerably. So at that point, then it was, we just kind of left the discussion there because nobody could see us spending a whole bunch of money on the housing. And at that point, we didn't know anything more about the grants. And certainly, I don't think the idea of having some kind of housing that's spread out around and about the fire hall wasn't really considered. So anyway, the architect did make the comment about that it would be very expensive to include housing in it.
Okay, seeing nobody else wants to discuss this, I'll call the question. All in favor? No one opposed. Thank you. Okay, let's move along. Where are we here? Page 33, thank you, Councillor Shukin. This is business arising from minutes to be considered at this council meeting. This is the Committee of the Whole recommendations from June 9th, 2025. Does someone want to move that? Page 33.
So moved.
Move that council refer the correspondence to the CAO to provide council a report on next steps. This was correspondence regarding Gorse. This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Does anybody wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I just wondered if we might at the same time, Gorse is just one of the problems out there. The other one that I heard about the other day from Robin Tunnicliffe, who's a local farmer, she said that thistle's another big problem in the same way. And so I was hoping that we might, and I'm sorry, just trying to find my place before we made the move here, that we might just generalize the request that we would like some idea about noxious weed management under the Provincial Weed Act. So Gorse is the topic, but it's actually, there's a variety of plants. Tansy ragwort is another. These are plants that are considered weeds, and so I'm interested in getting a report back. I hope council would be interested on just the entire, what about these noxious weeds, whether they be gorse, thistle, tansy ragwort. The letter's about gorse.
Yeah,
Same mechanism for all of them.
Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, I have no disagreement with that. There are a number of these plants that seem to be in their own categories. Gorse is a special one. It is more significant than broom just because of the prickly nature of it. And as Kathy Atherton noted, like going after gorse requires a different level of commitment. And I just applaud her for raising it for us. But you know, bringing forward, what we might do in terms of noxious weeds, I think that's a good plan. So, but
thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, Councillor F.
Yeah, I just think that with the weeds, I mean, we can't start ordering people to start removing these things off their private property because we couldn't in any way, shape, or form enforce that. But I do think that moving ahead with an education program on it where people were much more aware of exactly what these noxious weeds look like. Because I know, tansy ragwort's pretty obvious, and so is broom and gorse, but I know, I've looked at books, I've had pamphlets, and I look at these things and I still can't figure out what exactly this weed is supposed to look like. So I think, an education program, report is fine, but I don't think that it's the place of council to start adding bylaws about what people are going to have to do with weeds.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Gray?
Just to clarify, I don't think it's about bylaws, it's simply getting a look at the Provincial Weed Act and seeing what we're required to do under the current legislation and how it would work to be more active on the noxious weeds in our community. But we'll get the report and then we'll know a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Okay, so back to the motion about the Gorse and the letter that was attached. I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. We have next reports for action. We have a staff report, verbal, the CRD contribution agreement bulk water station. That's on page 37. Did you want to introduce that, Councillor Donaldson or CAO Payette? Councillor Donaldson, do you want to make a comment on that?
So the bulk water station was a solution that came out of some water talks and observation of listening to residents saying how their wells were drying up sooner each year due to climate and urban development on our borders and a variety of other reasons, I suspect. So did the 3 water talks in early 2024, different speakers at each one of those. The chambers were full. There was 60 people, at minimum 60 people at each one of those talks. The last one was an engineer that I asked from the Wanafuka Water Commission, where I sit on the board there, came and gave us a presentation. Also gave us some idea of costs of what it would cost to put piped water in. So there's piped water, there's wells, there's bulk water stations. So we also identified that there is a bulk water station on Henry Way and just off Langford Parkway, a very congested area of Langford. The next closest would be East Souk and Otter Point. I think there might be one out Sun River as well. This was a more attainable solution in the CRD, or not CRD, the Wanafuka Water staff met with our staff and looked for some sites. I had some sites as well in mind, but as the process went on and I learned more, the sites I thought about weren't quite as applicable, especially with the amount of traffic the bulk water station attracts. So I was able to, I was guided by the board that I sit with and some of the more experienced people there, how to put a notice motion together, and we did, and had a discussion at a following meeting. One of the representatives at the table, a colleague of ours from Souk, was there and gave us a lot of feedback of the activity that goes on at the Otter Point station. So that was all very helpful. Fast forward to having it approved through the board. It wasn't we weren't able to put it onto the budget at times. We just finished our budget discussions in the late fall of 24. So it will be it is in their budget now for this coming year, or it will be. Having said that, they had suggested they pay 50% of the installment. They will take care of all of that, and that we be if we could also take care of the other 50%. In approaching CFO Creek, we found that there was some money that was given to us from the provincial government. It's like a climate action type of grant, only we didn't apply for it. It's just money that the government gives to us. Mr. Creek did inquire with the province to see if this was an applicable project, and it certainly was. So we had their blessing, and so it's a 50-50. We don't have to do any maintenance on it. The water commission, or the water board, will take care of the installation and the management of it. So I understand already that the word is out there, and even the water trucks are thrilled that it's that much closer. They don't have to travel all the way to these other places to be able to service customers here in Metchosin. It also allows for residents, if they're so inclined, to equip their pickup trucks or trailers with totes that they can manage their own water in that way. And it's just a swipe of a card. They have to pay for all of this for us and learn how to do it appropriately, so there's no backwash and that sort of stuff. There's a lot of sanitation concerns, obviously.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that summary. Does staff want to add anything to that, either Mr. Creek or Mr. Payette?
Just a straightforward contribution agreement this commits us to 50% of the cost.
And so the agreements on page 37 to 42. Mr. Creek, did you want to make any comments regarding this?
Thank you. Through the chair, Councillor Donaldson covered pretty much everything there. So it was approved in our last budget cycle in our capital plan. We've moved it forward from being in 2026 to 2025, so that they can do the engineering design this year, and then they can start installation early 2026, and hopefully have it in before summer 2026 if all goes well. But it's great because they get to manage it all, take care of it, and we just got to take money out of our grant that was given to us, and this is a easy project.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gray?
I'd like to know or ask what locations are under consideration, and in the end, who decides the location? Is that a staff decision, a CRD decision, or is council involved? Not that we should be, I'm just curious how that process works.
Councillor Donaldson?
So the report that I saw when I attended the water board meeting was there were two locations that were a consideration. One was on Lombard. It would be near the cement plant, but it's in the vicinity of the cement plant. I can't explain it exactly where. The other one was on William Head Road, sort of at the base of Lombard. That seems to be the choice site just because of the accessibility. There's a lot more room. There's a larger boulevard there. More room for trucks to come in and out. Apparently these water stations get very busy. And so with it being on Lombard, it is a small country road, residential neighborhood. So the William Head site, I believe, might be the better option.
And who decides then? Is that the CRD?
I think that would be a staff decision with recommendations from the CRD. Anything else? About any comments about the agreement? It seems pretty straightforward to me. Not quite boilerplate, but seems straightforward. Councillor Epton, Councillor Shukin.
I was just going to make the motion, but
Don't go ahead.
let's move that council approve the contribution agreement with the Capital Regional District for the construction of a bulk water station within Metchosin, and authorize the mayor and CEO to execute the agreement on behalf of the district.
Okay.
Second. Oh, sorry. Councilor.
This is moved by Council Epp, seconded by Council Donaldson. More discussion. Councillor Shukin.
I just want to pass on a big note of thanks to Councillor Donaldson for moving this along. I attended, I think, 2 of the 3 sessions, and they were very well done. And as a follow-up to that, I met with a number of residents to talk about the potential of bringing in piped water.
Mm-hmm.
And we began to realize it was very difficult in terms of simply getting the number of people on board to do that local service agreement, and then the cost as well. And we quickly made a beeline to the next best option was the bulk water station. And if you're thinking about hauling water, there must be some equation out there around time, distance, and weight. And the fact that if you don't have that big truck, you're very limited in what you can do on your own. So if you're closing that time gap, you have the potential of maybe doing some of your own hauling. The cost in terms of commercial water haulers, I understand it's gone up considerably over the last few years, so this might help with that as well on a kind of an enduring basis. So I think it's a great move.
Anybody else wish to speak? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. The next topic, I'm very pleased to announce the 2024 District Metchosin Annual Report. I was wondering if we could have the Deputy Corporate Officer speak to this. Ms. Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. Staff are pleased to introduce the District of Metchosin Draft Annual Report for 2024. The purpose of this evening is to make the draft report available for public inspection and to schedule an annual meeting to consider the report and receive input from the public. The annual report includes the audited financial statements for 2024, a list of permissive tax exemptions for 2024, a report on municipal services and operations, a progress report on the previous year's objectives and measures, declarations of disqualification, a statement of objectives and measures used to determine progress during the current and following year. Notice of the annual meeting will be published in accordance with Section 94 of the Charter. Questions?
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments for the Deputy Corporate Officer or for other staff? Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Gray, Councillor Shukin.
Yes, thank you very much. I always look forward to reading the annual report, and quite thrilled that some of the pictures I submitted are in there, and a few that I recognize that my family was even part of. I just wanted to know from the Deputy Corporate Officer if there are any comments of changes, not like spelling errors, probably, that if we do that here, or if we can just give her a note, or just for clarity, or how does that work?
Are they just comment, editorial comments?
Editorial types.
Shall they send them to you?
Through the chair, yes, you can send any edits to me. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Shukin and Councillor Gray.
So I think I was next just to say thanks to the Deputy Corporate Officer for preparing this note. What impresses me about it is the amount of work that the staff has done. So I want to say thanks to the DCO, but also to our CAO and all of the staff for the work that is displayed here. And I'm just sort of looking again, 117 meetings in 2024. That's an awful lot of effort just to just make decisions. And then the rest of the report is kind of about all those things that happen as a result. But a big thanks to all those involved.
Absolutely. Councillor Shukin.
I just want to pass on thanks to DCO Hansen, and I thought it was a spectacular document and super easy to read, and great work in terms of going back and documenting what it is we did, even if it's to get something on the agenda and begin to consider it. I do have to confess I groaned a little bit between pages 58, 59, and 60 when I was flipping through our priorities, and flipped the final page to note that there was one more page of priorities. Maybe council has to work at focusing and limiting itself, but we're certainly ambitious, and I just want to pass on thanks to staff for helping us with those ambitions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great work too, by Ms. Hansen.
Councillor App.
Yeah, I too. It's really a great report. So, as Councillor Shukin said, it's so easy to read, and I love all the pictures, and it's just a great report. So thanks very much for all the work that went into it. And I will move that Council directs staff to make available for public inspection District of Metchosin 2024 annual report in accordance with Section 97 of the Community Charter, and schedule an annual meeting regarding the 2024 annual report at a special meeting June 30th, 2025 in accordance with Section 99 of the Community Charter, and publish notice of the annual meeting in accordance with Section 94 of the Community Charter.
Okay, thank you. This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Gray. Comments? I would also like to thank the Deputy Corporate Officer and other staff. If you look at this report compared to 2022 or any of the other years, this is a more sophisticated report, more comprehensive and thorough. And I know that the Deputy Corporate Officer spent many a weekend on this report. So truly, thank you from Council for this. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Great. On page 141, we have a report from the Fire Chief, the Emergency Program Coordinator, to CAO Payette, and this is to ask permission to use the grounds for the North American Amateur Radio Field Day event from the West Coast Amateur Radio Association. We have done this in previous years, and this is for June 29th, June 28th and 29th, 2023. I think this is a great event. I think we should support it. Go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
I'd move that council approve the request from West Coast Amateur Radio Association for the use of the municipal grounds for the North American Amateur Radio Field Day, June 28th and 29th, 2025. So moved.
Okay, moved by Councillor Shukin, second by Councillor Epp. Comments? Call the question. Yep, vote to you vote no. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And Mayor Little, the one thing I might just mention is just to make sure that the chief or Wara ask the cricket club if there are any games scheduled, which we did during the Metchosin garage sale, but it ended up there was a game even when, so just ask them to maybe double check.
Okay, I'll ask the deputy corporate officer to make note of that so we can make contact with the cricket club. Good point. Thank you. Moving along to page 143, we have the financial report for the first quarter for 2025 from our CFO, Mr. Creek. Mr. Creek.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as noted, this is through the chair. Okay. So as noted, this is for the first quarter of 2025. Bit of a delay on this, waiting for the budget to get approved and then going through tax season, finalizing the new budget software. So you'll notice that the pages 146 through 176 are much different than what you were looking at last year. This is part of the new software. I can still get you the old ones if you really want to, but this is kind of what we're aiming for the rest of the year and going into the budget season for 2026. So I guess the big numbers everybody's wondering about. Revenue, pretty limited in the first quarter as expected. We had a little bit more building revenue than budgeted, although speaking with the planning department, as mentioned earlier, we've got the Hans Helgeson school that's being built for quite a bit of money, and that's going to drive up our building revenue. There's quite a few other projects that should push us over budget for the rest of the year. School revenues are also looking better than last year, thanks to pickleball and a bunch of people renting the classrooms for different courses. Although in the original budget, I did have an additional lease that has been further delayed. So we're going to be a little bit lower than budget based on that, but hopefully come 2026, that'll be in there. We can start rolling on that. And then, as everybody's discovered, they've got a tax bill in their mail. And so that'll start showing up in the second quarter and final collection by the end of the third quarter. Expenses. So most of those are on track. Some of them would appear to be over budget. If anything's over 25%, it's something related to either insurance, where we pay all up front in the first quarter, and that's good for the rest of the year. Also software fees, we pay for our accounting software, webcasting here. That's all paid in January, February, good for the rest of the year, so it all ends up shaking out by the end. The big one that might pop up in there is repairs for Municipal Hall. That is going to be over budget for this year. We had a number of broken toilets around here that ended up getting repaired. And then our utilities are a bit over budget, even after including the increase from BC Hydro and Fortis. The usage in the early part of the year with that cold snap in January, at the end of January, really drove up our usage at the Firehall and school. So hopefully slows down for the summer and everything's kind of evened out there. And then capital projects. So we really didn't do a whole lot with those in the first quarter, just waiting for winter to get over. But as you've noticed, we've got a new roof on the Municipal Hall. So that one's completed. Road projects are just out to tender now. Should be getting those rolling here in the next month or two, hopefully. And then other equipment purchases that'll happen through the fire hall, that type of thing. But we'll have more information come the second quarter report, which will be out shortly. Questions?
Okay, questions. Does anybody have any questions for CFO Creek? Councillor Shukin, then Councillor Donaldson.
Not so much a question. It's more of a comment. I really appreciate the layout of this report. It's reminiscent of what I see at the Library Board and the Water Board in their budget reports. Specifically when you've got the budget, the actual, and the percent that's been used, those are all good gauges for us to be able to watch and monitor as we go along. So I look forward to the next one as well. Thank you.
Councillor Shukin.
Sorry, a bit of a nerdy question, but how do you like the software? Is it working well than what you hoped for?
Through chair. Yeah. So I use this software back up in Comox, and then just getting more used to it. Just inputting everything right now for every department, and then working with all the department heads to get all of the detail into each account. It's a drastic improvement from what was being used here earlier, and then it'll just be able to generate far greater information for council and the public. And then, as the auditor was saying when they were here, if you wanted to, like, I can create financial statements for you for each quarter, kind of showing you where we're at with cash and investments and that type of thing, to provide even greater detail. But you know, it's been great. There's a couple of hiccups with the new general ledger accounts, but nothing we'll remember by next year. Great.
That's great. Yeah, that was one of the compliments from the auditor, the KPMG auditor, was that we were moving forward with the new computer system for accounting. So congratulations on that. Anybody else have any comments? Okay. Move receipt. Does anybody want to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, we have the District of Metchosin 2024 Statement of Financial Information. Mr. Creek.
So thank you through the chair. This basically goes along with our annual report. It's more legislative requirements, has to be done by the end of June and given to them. So we got staff completed this last week and a half ago. So well ahead of schedule. Again, just shows our financial statements that have been audited by KPMG, and then some additional information that relates to our remuneration expenses for council and staff, anybody that was making over $75,000 a year, and then any employment expenses, such as my accounting dues and going off to conferences, that type of thing is included there. We got severance agreements, payments to suppliers, so any contractor or company that would pay more than $25,000, there's a breakdown in there. Anybody less than $25,000 is just lumped into one number. And then payments made from BC wildfire deployments, the schedule for grants, so go to the community fund, that type of thing. And then the schedule for financial information approval. Any questions?
Any questions, Councillor Gray?
Yes, on page 217 of the agenda package, there's a schedule of severance agreements. And I wonder, is there prohibition on naming the staff person and stating the actual severance dollars paid? I'm asking simply because this was a big interest to some people in the community earlier on in the council's tenure.
Through the chair, I don't believe there's a real prohibition on it, but the Financial Information Act just states you just have to say that there was an employee and put the remuneration in the amount of months that it was equal to. So it doesn't state you have to say if it was $10,000 or $50,000 or anything like that. It just says what would be equal to the number of months that they were employed.
So just to follow up, so if someone was interested, they would take this number of months compensation and look at the previous year's annual salary and just calculate it themselves?
Through your chair, correct.
But we don't publish it in the SOFI?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that. Very comprehensive report. Thank you for that. And also thank you for the timeline. I know in past years they've been really struggling towards the end of June to get this out, and it's great to see that things are being done differently. Great. Okay, I'll take a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Shukin, second by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And next we have the District of Metchosin Public Communication Report stats for May of 2025. We receive these every month. These are the statistics on what the public is calling in about, complaining or commenting about, complimenting sometimes even. Any comments on this? Councillor Gray, do you have a question?
Yes, are these bylaw infractions or potential bylaw infractions people are reporting?
I didn't hear you. Are these bylaw?
Potential bylaw infractions that are being reported as compared to complaints?
They are potential bylaw infractions, but we won't know that.
No.
That is between the community and the district staff.
Thank you.
Councillor Shukin? No? Okay, moved by Councillor Shukin, second by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. And we have the Metchosin Building Inspection Department permit revenue. As CFO Creek just mentioned, this will increase towards the end of the year, but we definitely have the numbers here at the year to date. Moved by received by Councillor Epps, second by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. And then on page 227, we have bylaw enforcement summary for 2025. This is up until April of this year. You can see there's been many bylaw enforcement issues taken up by our CRD bylaw enforcement. Definitely there's many hours that are spent particularly in land use and administration miscellaneous. Any comments or questions? No? If I'll take a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have correspondence for information on page, starting on page 231.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Epps, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. This is a letter from Minister Ravi Kahlon about the small scale multi-unit housing, SSMUH requirements, reminding us of the obligations, complimenting some of the communities for doing this, but reminding us of the 1 year anniversary of this being implemented, and there's a lot of information here for our information. Anybody want to comment on this one? No? Okay, motion to, we already have a motion on the table. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Secondly, on page 235, we have we have a letter from Terry Falandolo, Assistant Deputy Minister for the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs. I think this is a good idea. I'm actually going to ask the Deputy Corporate Officer to speak to this, and this is regarding allowing for a section in the community charter to speak to circumstances specific to government, local government, First Nations relations and conversations. Deputy Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Chair. So the province has been working on adding provisions to the Section 90 for going in closed meetings to make a more clarity around going in camera for First Nations. So the provision around Section 92 that we typically use would that's the intergovernment relations, would also include First Nations, and they would also include provision that was more in line with Section 18.1 of FIPA, which requires local or public bodies to withhold information related to First Nations. So it would just be more in line with that, and that's information related to First Nations, cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, and manifestations of science, technologies, and cultures. So it's just to give clearer provisions around going in closed meetings around First Nations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this isn't, this is a motion to receive. I think it's a good idea. There is a link here if you want more information from UBCM regarding this. And they're also asking for feedback. So if you wish to provide feedback on this, then that would be welcome. So I'll take a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have no other business. We have time for a couple of questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Jeffrey, you were quite tall. Yeah, this goes back to the grant application, and correct me, and I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in this at all, but section 7.2 required application contents. Mayor Little, you spoke about the fact that council needed to have a resolution, but based on what they say here that the resolution needs to include, I didn't hear that tonight in your resolution, and maybe it's embedded in option 1A, but it says here, current council or board resolution indicating support for the proposed activities and willingness to provide overall grant management and support any cost overruns. It's the second part there, the cost overruns, that I didn't hear any discussion with tonight in regards to the motion that you made. So perhaps inadvertently you have delayed this.
Okay. CAO Payette, did you want to comment on that?
I didn't quite hear, but the cost overruns is a typical language in every grant application that I've ever applied for. So cost overruns are, like, understood that council realizes there could be cost overruns, but through the process of the architectural and engineering designs and the firming up of costs of the project and the what's the term, the allowable contingencies, that the province understands that the contingency, if we blow a contingency, that the province will review our financial situation prior to approval, and there'll be like a risk management assessment of our finances done by the province before they give the grant application approval. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Hipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.